It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we move into a Friday. Gary, what's happening?
So there I was. I slept really good in my nap before I came into work.
All right.
And I woke up, it was like 20 to 10.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay, I got a couple more minutes sleep. And then I went back to sleep.
Yeah.
When I woke up, I don't remember turning off my alarm, but I must have.
Man.
It's like 20 after 10. I'm absolutely panicking. It's like, oh, no, so there I am moving, getting everything done. But I flick on the TV as I do it, and it was on the station because every night before I leave, I watch about 10 minutes of Seinfeld. It puts me in a better mood. Seinfeld's on. So as I'm doing stuff, I just grab the phone to scan. And first thing I do is scan to CNBC to see what the Dow futures are. Mm-hmm. Well, not just the Dow futures, everything, just to see what it is. And the first thing I see is Trump says he's willing to negotiate just an hour after all of his aides say this is not a negotiation of 24 hours. It's not a negotiation. He's willing to negotiate. So then that's when I flick on the TV. When I flick on the TV, the first thing I see is George Costanza saying, Jerry, it's a negotiation, and he negotiates down. Remember that one where he's
right. And then you just read something where they said he seems to be doing a Costanza.
Then I
an article?
Then I go to National Review, Dan McLaughlin's column, "The Suicidal Impulse of American Politics." And he says, worst of all, Trump seems to be taking the George Costanza approach. I'm like, I just read it to you going, oh, my. It says, think of what you'd normally do and then do the opposite to the economic policies that succeeded so well in his first presidential term,
right.
Saying he's doing the opposite of what he did in his first term. Because as we said, when he renegotiated USMCA, he really didn't change NAFTA much.
Right.
It was 98% the same. There were very little changes, and I don't know whether he regrets that or whatever. But what an interesting day it was. We'll see where it.
Well, I'm watching the presser with Levitt, and this is not a negotiation, and I thought to myself, you know how it's a negotiation when they keep insisting it's not a negotiation, and it wasn't. I mean, right after that, the president is on Air Force One, and the gaggle begins. And this is what I love about Forbes breaking news they have on YouTube, their channel.
Oh, yeah.
Great channel to follow because they put a lot of raw stuff up there. And so they put the gaggle up from Air Force One. And he comes out with his gold card, and then the Trump gold card and that. And then, he asks, it was actually a pretty funny moment. He goes, any of you guys want to buy one? He's asking the press. Mm-hmm. It's $5 million. Any of y'all want to buy one? And the look in his eye, like, of course not. You can't afford this. But then he goes, okay, let's go. And he starts the questioning. And the first question, it gets into the Dow. And then about 3 minutes in, they ask him about a question about negotiations. And he says, well, for instance, China, when it comes to TikTok, we might be working a deal. And they may say to us, hey, is there anything we can do on tariffs? And this gives us, the tariffs give us, of course, a great position when it comes to leverage, when it comes to negotiations. So, for all of the people that are arguing for it, that are saying, well, it's a negotiation. It's not a negotiation. It's all over the place. Well, I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. The problem is the markets don't know. Certainly yesterday, the markets don't believe it's about negotiation. They believe exactly what we said on yesterday's show, that it is a long-term approach, that this is a true gauntlet being thrown down when it comes to trade by the U.S., by the Trump administration. That's what the market believes. And so, the messaging within an hour or two changes from his official spokesperson to him. Now, we've seen that before. We saw that in the first Trump term. But this is where you get back and you put uncertainty into the markets.
Well, and what you found out, too, is the tariffs that we have put on other countries have nothing to do with the tariffs that they put on us.
It's not actual tariffs in every case. It's government policy. It's VAT tax. It's everything else that they're rolling in, saying this is what they charge us. But it may not be a tariff directly. Is what you're saying. What they did was, it's not about that. It's about the trade deficit divided by the amount of imports. Oh, that's right. The formula that came out.
The formula they came up with has nothing to do with tariffs. It has nothing to do with trade barriers.
Right.
It's simply what the trade deficit is divided by the amount of imports.
Who was it? The Wall Street Journal that broke that down and
everybody
did.
Everybody had it, but it's got nothing to do with the tariffs that any country has on it. And that's what we have said from the very beginning. The messaging sucks on everything. Nothing is clear on this entire thing. All you've sown is complete confusion, even to the point, as we said before, because they were adamant for 24 hours. This is not a negotiation. This is the way it's going to be. And then the president, it's like, I wake up, it's like, well, we're open to we're open to negotiations. What do you negotiate? You're not negotiating tariffs. You're negotiating.
What are you going to give up? And what are you going to ask for? I mean, that's the other thing, too, is what isn't known the other day. What wasn't known was before the announcement. All right, what's going to be announced, and then what might change tomorrow. But then it literally was within an hour and a half or so. The official word went from absolutely not a negotiation to this gives us great leverage in negotiations.
Yeah. I did notice the way that it was covered. Every mainstream pro-Trump conservative news outlet talked about the Stellantis plants in Mexico and Canada stopping production. None of them in the story put the fact that there are 5 U.S. auto plants that are laying off.
Right.
None of them. And I'm like, wow. It's amazing the way that the tribalism, we've said this before, we want economic truth. And if there's bull crap out there, we're going to call everybody on the bull crap. We don't care. We said it yesterday.
Well, whatever you're doing, just say what you're doing.
Well, this happened yesterday where Trump, and I don't think you can argue this point. Trump said, look, because they were panicking. I don't know if they expected. I have no idea if they expected the stock market to tank as much as it did yesterday.
He kind of moved on from the question. He said, we've been sick for a long time, so he didn't really go on like he normally does with a question like that. And that was the first question on the gaggle, during the gaggle. So,
well, when he said, I think it was on True Social, where he said, you need to trust me on this. And I said, why? Remember, the Trump and his trade negotiators are the only ones that were involved in the free trade agreement with Canada, Mexico, and South Korea, both who have been hit hugely with taxes. I believe 12 free trade agreements. If they go into effect, supposed to go into effect tomorrow. The automobile ones have already gone into effect, but everything's supposed to start tomorrow.
Right.
Well, you've broken 12 free trade agreements. You negotiated alone 3 of the biggest ones with South Korea and the one with Mexico and Canada, you said, quote, are the greatest free trade agreements ever. And now you're telling me they're complete manure. Why should I trust you when you told me you made the greatest free trade agreement ever, and now you say it's a piece of crap? All of them.
Why has no one asked him that? Why hasn't there been a question? Are you going to renegotiate USMCA?
Right. And so when you
because if you're looking at this deal, or if you're looking at these tariffs, then you have to say, well, all the deals are out now. There's all trade deals. So if they want to come to whatever you're going to say about it, my question is, why hasn't the media asked him about that?
Don't know. But that's so when I saw that yesterday, that's the first thing that hit me. I said, well, I'm only responding to what you've communicated with me. I've got nothing to do. I didn't negotiate the free trade agreements with Canada and Mexico. You did. Congress didn't negotiate it. You did. Nobody else did. You did. And now you're saying you need to trust me now when you're saying that you negotiated the worst free trade agreements ever that you once said were the best free trade agreements. What changed? Explain it to me. And as I said, people say, we've got the few calls this week that we have gotten, and the response has been, well, you need to trust him. Why? Explain to me first what you did on those free trade agreements that now you say are a piece of crap. Horrible. Horrible. Every single thing. When the people post, and again, we know that they're not fully accurate when they post all of the tariff amounts, because there's a ton of free trade. They haven't even reached those particular goals. Mm-hmm. They just haven't reached them. And so the tariffs don't go into effect, but you negotiated all those tariffs. When anybody posts, this is what Canada charges, Trump is the one that negotiated that. And that's when I thought about it when the Seinfeld thing came on. Well, you negotiated down. Yeah. Because you're the one that did it. Nobody else negotiated the free trade agreements with South Korea, Canada, and Mexico that now Trump is saying is complete manure except Trump. And then he says, trust me now. Well, why? You're telling me you screwed me over last time.
Well, the question I have is, what do I trust? Trust what? Which move?
Yeah.
The move that says this is not a negotiation. The permanent move, basically, that we were led to believe when you announced the tariffs, or the following day when you say, well, we could negotiate.
Well, then they're not, as we said yesterday, one of the biggest things we're complaining about is you're not telling us the truth. You're not being consistent. You're not telling us the truth. And by saying that, for example, as you did, Vietnam has a 90% tariff. No, they don't.
Right. That's not a tariff.
No, all the things that they brought up as a tariff are not tariffs. That list that you saw are not the tariffs that they have against us. It's the formula that they figured out of the trade imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the first to report that, what I was saying earlier, I think the first to discover that was, and it was like right away. They said while they were actually watching it, the staff there at the Wall Street Journal was saying, well, wait a minute. This is a formula, and they did the formula. They were the first to discover that formula.
Yeah, and it's got nothing to do with tariffs. It has to do with imports and trade and trade imbalance.
Right.
What is it? It's the trade deficit divided by the amount of imports.
Right.
That's got nothing to do with tariffs. Absolutely nothing. So you're not anybody who has a basic understanding of economics is saying, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Now, the surrogates and everybody else going, rah, 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 sis, boom, bah, that fine. That's going to happen in politics. But when you actually get to the economics of it, they're not communicating anything effectively or truthfully.
Well, and then again, what is the end goal?
And by the way, they could say truthfully, this is the tariff that Spain has on us. It's 10%. Ours is 5% on them. We're upping it to 5%. We're only doing it reciprocal. They could do that. They decided not to do that. They told us that's what they were going to do, and they didn't do that.
Right. Yeah, I again, it goes back to what is the goal?
Yeah.
Because it changed during the day yesterday between Levitt and the gaggle on Air Force One. It changed. When you say we can negotiate, if you can negotiate with China, you're going to negotiate with everybody. The Wall Street Journal, in a story that came out less than an hour ago, the world is bracing for a flood of cheap Chinese goods.
Well, as I said, it was that Japan, South Korea, and China now have an agreement to work together.
Right.
And Europe now is saying, okay, let's start building alliances, and we'll shut the USA out. We've said all along, because people ask, what would you guys do? Well, we said what we do. We take the problem people, you do actually the reciprocal tariffs, and you promote them one-on-one and say, this is what we want to do. But basically, you go after China.
Right. And you work with your trade partners, and now what's happening? China's working with our trade partners to shut us out.
Right.
That's where we are. That's basically what.
And by the way,
scenarios
the layoffs from 5 different U.S. auto manufacturers is because they said, well, because the parts are going to be tariffed.
Right.
So it's going to be more expensive to buy American vehicles, so we're going to be selling less.
Right. Yeah, they have to put their business plan in order as soon as something is announced. That's the problem, by the way, with the messaging ever changing. It means they have to go back to the table and change their plans.
So if you ask me what's going on, I have to tell you, I don't know.
Have no idea.
I have no idea. Can't tell you. They're not
ever changing.
Yep. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle to help avoid downtime and keep your rig rolling through to next winter. When completing your spring maintenance check, don't overlook your windshield wipers. Extreme temperatures, snow, and ice can tear windshield wipers apart. Check on yours now to prepare for spring showers and avoid squinting through streaks. A general rule of thumb is to replace your wiper blades every 6 months. But if your inspection uncovers streaking, worn rubber, or damaged wiper frames, you may want to purchase a new set sooner.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Ashley sent me this. I hope you're happy with the fact that Donald Trump wrecked this country's economy. This country was already great. The only reason you support Trump is because y'all are racist bigots. And she actually used y'all. So,
look, a bad day on Wall Street is not a wrecked economy. So,
no.
Yeah, let's be clear. The leftists clearly have nothing but, we'll just name call. Well, you guys are a bunch of racists.
I will say it's really interesting to see everybody who used to be anti-tariff is now pro-tariff, and everybody who was pro-tariff is now anti-tariff.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting yesterday to look at that.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to this. Honestly, I don't care what anybody else's opinion on it is. Nobody's opinion matters. The only thing that matters is where the economy does go. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Already getting messages. Look, guys, you need to support Trump. And I'm saying, why? We just went over that. Why?
Well,
why should I? Trump has communicated to me. Tell me how I got the message wrong. I'd love for somebody to tell me how I got the message wrong. Trump is the one that solely, no one else was involved in it. No one negotiated the Canada and the Mexico Free Trade Agreement. Trump and no one else, except the people that worked for him, the trade representatives, Trump himself negotiated the South Korean Free Trade Agreement. And now he's telling me it's all a piece of crap when he sold the USMCA to me as the best free trade agreement ever. And now you're telling me I need to trust him now. Why?
if you're asking me to be a cheerleader, you got the wrong guy.
Yeah. Well, we said it yesterday. Look,
I'm not going to rah. I'm not going to. This isn't a rally.
Yeah.
This is the U.S. economy.
You can find the surrogates that will not talk about the economics of it, and this just says sis, boom, rah. That's not us. It's never been us. We have been consistent. We told you for the last year and a half as we supported Trump on this, said when it comes to the tariffs, it's going to come to a head down the road. We have been completely and totally consistent on where we stand on tariffs, that they can be used effectively if somebody is involved in unfair trade with the United States or if they're stealing our intellectual property. We've never said that tariffs cannot be used effectively for a negotiating position. But when the person who tells me that Canada and Mexico are screwing us over completely, and he alone is the one that did the agreement, for me to have questions and say, you're saying, trust me now, I'm asking you why, when you've communicated this message to me, why am I wrong?
And why haven't we heard that there's going to be a new negotiation on USMCA?
Yeah. We've made it clear that we should isolate China, should isolate Venezuela. There's a bunch of countries out there we could tell you we need to isolate.
Well, and I also, want to reiterate, and I don't know why I have to do this, but apparently I do. All of them, including Trump, are public servants.
Yeah.
They work for us.
They're not deities.
I voted for him three times.
We do not practice political idolatry on the show.
No. Nope. Not going to get that.
Yeah. This isn't the show that does that. We want the truth, and we talk the truth of economics. We don't sit in a delusional world. We look at the real world.
And right now, it appears that Lutnick and Navarro have the president's ear completely on this.
Yeah.
But it's also what he's talked about on trade deficits for decades.
Right.
So, it was, how late in the game was it? Or it wasn't late in the game, but it wasn't right away in his first term that he brought on Kudlow. He brought Kudlow in later.
And Steve Moore, yes.
And Steve Moore.
Yeah.
So, I would love to, go back to the fly on the wall moment in that moment to see, all right, what drove that? I have no idea. But Trump is known to change. It happened yesterday within an hour because Levitt doesn't get her talking points from Levitt. Levitt's talking points were clear, and then an hour or two later, whenever it was, on Air Force One, the president said something very different. Said the opposite. So, again, this isn't, well, why aren't you guys just putting your heads in the sand or drawing the curtains, closing the door and turning everything off and hoping and trusting that everything will be fine?
And we told you a long time ago, We have no problem there. You know, it's and I know that in the mainstream media, for example, that it's and with I think the political idolatry that exists today, it's if you support someone, you have to support everything they do. And we've always said, "Are you kidding me? I can vote for someone, as I did Trump, and vote to stop the weaponization of government and going on and stop what's happening at the border." But we've told you, if you've been a long-time listener to the show, you know where we stand on tariffs in general, not tariffs that are justified because somebody is stealing your intellectual property or involved in unfair trade practices, but tariffs in general. We've gone through all the economics of it many times before. And we said if Trump attempts to approach it again, we're going to come to a head again on those things.
Mm-hmm.
They're this thing that either you're agreement with somebody 100% or you're somehow betraying someone. We look at it in the opposite direction. We say, as you just said, they're civil servants. They owe me a consistent, especially the people that I vote for. I want a consistent message, and I want the truth.
Yep.
That's what I want. I want consistency, and I want the truth. That's what I want. And if I'm not getting it, you're going to hear. You're going to hear from us.
Right.
Just the reality of how it works here. Other people may not. If you wish to, and I dealt with the woman the other day, one of our listeners,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, look, if you wish to just, bow down and say whoever the person I vote for is always right, you can do that. There are radio shows that do that. We know. We get it from our great listeners who say, you guys actually explain economics. You actually go through it. You go through it point by point by point by point by point. And if you guys disagree, and it's funny, guys, somebody just wrote us the other day and said, you guys will go after the conservatives. Well, no, actually, we don't go after conservatives or libertarians the vast majority of the time because that's actually our belief. What we go after are people that claim that they're conservative and are not.
Or, someone who is claimed to be a conservative at some point and then goes against their conservative ideology.
Yeah. I have, since I become a talk show host, I'm trying to think. There was one thing, I can't remember what it was. That's how rare it is. Our opinions have been completely consistent for 20 years. We haven't changed on anything, not one thing. Well, and we can't change on economics because economics is not an opinion. As we've stated over and over again, it's how people respond to an incentive.
And there's this constant, well, you should listen to what so-and-so has to say. I don't care what they have to say. I don't care what anybody else's opinion is. Trump's the president. This was him. It wasn't Congress. If Congress had done this, we'd be going off on Congress.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody else's observation is. That doesn't matter. What the economy does is what matters. What the result is what matters.
Well, I've stated this before. Any policy that I would put into effect, for example, any policy that's pro-growth, if you cut capital gains tax today, let's say the president cut capital gains tax 15% yesterday, the stock market would have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Not that the stock market is the be-all, end-all, but the fact is it would skyrocket.
Well, the Trump bump in the fall was a real thing.
Right. What? Because
after he won.
Why?
They thought it was going to be pro-growth.
It's going to be pro-growth.
Right. The market was ready.
Right. And if when Trump cut, because Trump's done some great things, as we've said, with the corporate taxes, he gets absolutely full credit for that.
I thought nobody could get it below 30, and they got it to 21.
Yeah. And he did that alone. He pushed that alone.
Right.
He forced that.
When he didn't
force it. Right.
And in that first term, he didn't have full support of his party, and he made it happen.
Yep. So he gets absolute credit for that. This is issue by issue by issue with Trump or anybody else, and it always has. And there are no exceptions here. We talk the issues and we talk economics.
Right.
And it's that simple. And the reason that the stock market is going in the direction that it has the last couple of weeks is they view what's going on as anti-pro-growth. And as we explained over and over again, if you take out this particular situation and you just look at tariffs in general, the problem with tariffs are, because I've seen this yesterday, I've seen this a lot, which was, well, if tariffs aren't effective, why do some countries use it? Because they can't compete.
Right.
And so they raise the prices. So they raise the prices. They shut out everybody else so they can have some type of businesses, but they do it because they can't compete. Because when you put a tariff on, what you do to you, well, we're going to bring all the manufacturing back here. Well, what you do is you create a de facto monopoly.
Right.
You keep out all world competition. There is no world competition, which means you become less productive and efficient, and it means you can set the price.
Yep.
And you get a lack of productivity, a lack of efficiency, and goods and services that cost more. That's if you just decided to do tariffs across the board. It's not relating to the situation or anybody else cheating. That's the problem with tariffs.
Right.
And what you do is you protect certain industries and you hurt other industries. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we've talked about, the political thing, and we talked about yesterday, that you would think that from maybe a Navarro or a Lutnick, that our economy is the worst economy ever and everybody is in poverty.
Yeah. Right.
When you look at the history of capitalism and mostly free trade, because there are exceptions. For example, I do believe that if there are defense priorities that you may have to the federal government may have to subsidize a plant when it's an exception to the rule for something that's absolutely necessary for your defense.
Right.
That might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, no, it shouldn't happen. And, one of the things is where I got into a discussion yesterday with a couple of people. They said, well, how can we get manufacturing back? Well, we have increased manufacturing. But the tech sector and the service sector just keep on booming. And the manufacturing, even if it comes back, because I believe that one of the things that will bring manufacturing back is AI. And there's nobody better at AI. You look at the tech industry, it's the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brings it back. But that's not going to create a ton of blue-collar jobs.
Right.
It's going to create very high technical jobs, which will be great. But that's how you're going to do it, because there's such massive efficiencies in AI.
Mm-hmm.
You see it. I just saw a documentary on Tesla the other day. You look at it, you're like, are there any people in there? Well, yeah, there's people that have to fix and maintain everything because everything breaks,
right?
Of course. And you've got people in there, but the traditional blue-collar job of the human hand putting the widget together is going to continue to be less and less and less each and every year.
We've talked about that on a number of things,
right?
Whether it was the port situation with their strike or the assembly lines and everything in between. Because we said with the ports, the demand will put all the pressure on creating the efficiency there. You can say it's about jobs. You can say, hey, we need to keep these jobs and we need to keep these people there. And, yeah, it sucks to see a bunch of people laid off. But the marketplace requires greater efficiency every day. And that's where AI is going to come in. So that I'm with you on that. That definitely is going to happen.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Colleges are not dropping mandatory DEI courses. This is one of the things that we've been paying attention to when it comes to companies, too, where they're just labeling them in a different way.
Yeah.
So we'll have that coming up. What else? Oh, yeah, a couple of polls out there. Maine voters oppose the governor. Back Trump on the trans athletes and a whole bunch more. Oh, Trump confirms National Security Council firings.
Right.
Not Walz or anybody else, but we'll get to that coming up, too, which you figured was going to happen.
Yeah, it was inevitable.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. You know, Eric, the other thing is the politics of this all. And one of our concerns, and of course it's a legitimate concern, is we don't want Democrats to get in power. And we have stated the fact that the administration, when they came in, should have first worked, everything should have been pro-growth. Then if you wish to go after China or other countries that are involved in unfair trading practices, you do it after that. But the fact is, the public is extremely, extremely sensitive to the fact that prices are too high.
Right.
Even now today. And as we know, Trump won because he was able to get people to cross over independents and even Democrats and people that only voted for him. Scott Jennings brought this up. The number of people. I mean, Trump outperformed, which was completely the opposite of 2020. Trump outperformed members of Congress that were running and senators. People went in and voted for Trump and didn't vote for a Congress to back him up.
Right.
There's a bunch of people, independents, that voted for Trump, support Trump, didn't care about whether he had the support group in Congress to do it, and they're extremely wishy-washy. And the difference in this election was the 10 to 20 million people that decided to vote for Trump and not vote Democrat.
Right.
Call them independents, call whatever. But the fact is, they were extremely sensitive to prices. And what the president did and has done over the last month and a half, what we have seen is everything puts a pressure on prices.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask the question, and we said this yesterday, even if we believe the president was totally correct across the board, we'd still be throwing out a warning saying, is it worth it to do this, not knowing what you're going to get, except a market upheaval, price pressure, job losses, less manufacturing, and Democrats then win and are in office for the next 10 years. It was Rand Paul who brought it up yesterday. He talked about McKinley. They didn't get back into power for another 10 years. And after Smoot-Hawley in the 1930s, you didn't have a Republican-controlled Congress for 60 years after that.
Right.
Now, that wasn't the only reason but it's something to look at how important people's personal economies are. Forget about the economy of the country. It's personal economies, how you believe you're doing. And we asked the question yesterday, is the trade deficit worse than Democrats being in power again?
Right. Well, and
it's a legitimate political question.
We got into the discussion on trade deficits and what that means. But if you're under the impression that any trade deficit is bad, is it as bad as saying this? President Kamala Harris, Senate Majority Leader Cory Booker,
Speaker of the House, we have to do it.
Hakeem Jeffries?
No.
Who? Oh, AOC.
No.
Oh.
Jasmine Crockett.
How dare I forget about Jasmine? By the way, how could I forget about Jasmine?
By the way, I hate all of our listeners who are, every time she speaks, are sending me the audio and saying, she's your congressperson.
And to those listeners that are doing that, that's what I pay you to do. So keep it up.
It's like,
paying you good money.
I liked the one the other day where she was talking about, and I told them they need to hire me as a prosecutor?
Yeah.
As a prosecutor or lawyer, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You need to hire me. What's the reason? I'm black. She admitted she's DEI.
Oh. Yeah.
So I probably got 10 listeners send that one to me.
Right.
Every time she speaks, every time she says something. Hey, by the way, I actually love it. It's actually wonderful because I just burst out laughing every time.
Yeah.
And then I have got a bunch of people who say, 3 blocks, Gary, 3 blocks.
Right.
Because that's how far I am from being in another district. But in case people don't know, I'm in Jasmine Crockett's congressional district, which then makes it fun to say it and then blast her. There is some type of emotional satisfaction out of that.
Yeah, right.
But those, those are the things that you look at. But as you and I've said, any economic policy that I would propose if I was a member of Congress or whatever, and if it came to fruition, you'd see an immediate stock market increase because it's all would be pro-growth.
Well, I would have looked to go even further on what they call the Trump bump in that happened from Election Day on. The confidence in the market that it was going to be a pro-growth set of policies. Mm-hmm. And then come in and settle in, I don't know, wherever, later in the year, once you get those things done. Because here's the thing. The payoff is not just political. The payoff is also momentum in the economy, right? It's an actual payoff. It actually is pro-growth. It means the economy is chugging along. And then if you want to go in and say, look, here's what we're going to do. Tariff per tariff, reciprocal on all this. And we're going to choke out China. We're going to get with all of our trade partners. We're going to choke out China in a big way. I would have been 100% on board. I would have had no issues there. It still has an effect, but the market understands where you are and eventually prices all of that in. And then we go from there, and whatever adjustments happen after that happen. It's an understanding. It's not the uncertainty that throws everything into peril. When we talk about the markets, it's not just the Dow. It's not just investors.
No, it's not. No.
That's an indication as to what companies are doing and what their business plan or how their business plan might be changing. We discussed, in fact, there was a story about a construction company. The guy said, look, I thought I was going to have to pay a lot more for lumber when soft lumber was going to be hit on tariffs, so I stocked up. I put all my cash into soft lumber.
I heard they put an exemption in for soft lumber.
Yeah. And then,
But as they were saying, there was no
this actually
exemptions.
happened. This happened before.
Yeah.
And this guy says, I put all my cash into soft lumber, and then all of a sudden they roll it back. Now I'm cash poor, and I've got a bunch of soft lumber that isn't going to, it will over time, but I need that cash up front. As a small business, I'm going to have that cash on hand, but I'm stuck in that position. The point is that businesses have to, when it comes to regulation and laws, and in this case tariffs, they have to adjust on the fly. They have to adjust. They have to put their business plan changes every time the plan changes, every time the message changes. And we said it, I don't know, we've been saying it a couple of weeks. Whatever's going to happen, just state it. But within 24 hours of the tariffs being announced, the message was back and forth. This is not a negotiation. And then a little bit later in the day, this will help us negotiate. I'm not the public servant here. I'm also not the cheerleader. So I want to know what the government is doing. At all times, I want to know what they're doing. Because it's important to the economy. Because business plans are changing on the fly, and that's chaos. You can't have that. Because when they don't know, your default move is to pull back. And when you pull back in business, people lose. So, no, I'm not going to throw up any pom-poms here or have a megaphone. Not going to happen.
Catherine wrote us, it takes courage and hard work to sometimes go against the grain to affect the common good, talking about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That's a slogan, not economic policy.
Right. Get into the details of how things work on this.
Right. Stop with the slogans. Understand how economics works.
Right.
Slogans mean diddly and squat to us.
Right.
We care about the minutia of economic policy, getting into the weeds. How does it really work?
Right.
We care about, and if you say it takes courage and hard work, it also takes integrity, honesty to be upfront and a consistent message. That's something we should expect and don't get from the majority of our officials. And with Trump, for so much of what he has done, he has been blunt and mostly truthful.
He's been the only one who's been this blunt in I don't know how long.
Right. And then on this, they're all over the place. The message changes every single day. And I had a friend of mine, like I said last week, said, what would you do? I said, well, here's what I do. And I said, we've always talked about it, but if you're asking me what I would do in the Trump situation, I don't know. Because they don't identify to me. They're not consistent. I don't know what they wish to accomplish.
Right. That's it. What is the end goal?
What is the end goal? And neither does industry, neither do the CEOs. And then they say it's the tariff rate, and then it's got nothing to do with the tariff rate once they decide to go after other countries. It's got nothing to do with tariffs at all.
Right.
And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. It was pointed out yesterday that Costa Rica, for example, 10% was thrown on them.
Mm-hmm.
And was pointed out, it's like, well, we're throwing 10% tariffs on Costa Rica because of their geography. They grow coffee and bananas. We can't do that here.
Right.
And so now it goes 10% up. There's no reason to put a tariff on those products, but since we have a trade deficit with them because they produce so much coffee and so much bananas, and they're a very small country, so they have a trade surplus with us, we're putting 10% on.
On something we're never going to produce.
On something we're never going to produce. That doesn't make any sense.
That's not protectionist policy.
Makes no sense.
Right. Because we don't have anything to protect in that regard.
And then, you and I talked about some of the things that happened. For example, the Australian islands that were tariffed, and there's just no human that lives on them, and they're mocked because of it. That's not good.
No.
Because what it shows is, are you really doing your work if you're tariffing an island where no people are on?
Well, and it gets back to the question on this entire thing, who's in charge? Who's doing the homework?
Yep. It was fascinating to see. I don't know the last time that Thomas Sowell did an interview. What I have noticed is a lot of people use his names, use his name for their X site, because I'll read something it's like it would be a Thomas Sowell, Thomas Sowell something.
Thomas Sowell quotes or
whatever, something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, Thomas Sowell never said that.
Right.
Or they'll put a meme out. I'm like, he never said that. And I know because I started paying attention to Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell way back in the 70s. When I was in college, I started paying attention to them. And then they did, well, he didn't do it, but it was Milton Friedman and his wife that put together the book and then the video series Free to Choose.
Right.
Which, remember I had it? Remember I finally got the DVD series about 15 years ago? I said, I got to get the DVD series just to make sure I rewatch that over and over again because, and I loaned it out a bunch of times. I got it back. Then I loaned it out to somebody. I don't know who has it. Somebody has it now. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had it for 10 years.
Right.
Once people find out I had it, well, can I watch it? Can I watch it? Can I watch it?
And now you can watch it anywhere. I mean, it's all over
It's
YouTube.
on YouTube, yeah. You can watch on YouTube, Free to Choose. But Thomas Sowell is on that a lot, and you go back on YouTube and you see some of the debates. One of the greatest debates is Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman debating tariffs with unions. It was really great.
Right.
And some of these X sites have been implying that, Thomas Sowell is pro-tariff, which he's absolutely not. In fact, he holds almost the exact same opinion that we do, but he actually was interviewed. It was by the Hoover Institute actually interviewed him. This is the first. I don't remember the last. Do you remember the last time he was interviewed?
No.
And I made the mistake. This goes back a couple of years. I thought it was actually a Thomas Sowell that he was actually posting. They go, no, he doesn't post. That's somebody else posting for him.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. There's just quotes.
Yeah.
But we'll have some of what he had to say coming up. That's the first interview. I don't know. 15 years?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe? Mm-hmm. Maybe he's done interviews. I just haven't seen them. 866-90-RED-I.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Owner-operators with authority generally have two options when it comes to sourcing freight. Brokers on the spot market or directly from the source, the shipper. As any trucker with relatively recent experience with spot freight knows, the highs of working the load boards can be really high. On the other side of that coin, however, when the market flips in favor of shippers, it can be tough to keep your business afloat working with brokers. The smallest carriers with direct customers, however, can hang on through tough times or even prosper, as long as demand for their customers' product remains at least somewhat stable. Owner-operators in it for the long haul make direct business with customers a principal goal. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You saw that Grassley introduced another bill, the Grassley-Cantwell bill. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. You could see Republican members of Congress, especially the Senate, concerned yesterday with that stock market drop. Understand that's the biggest drop in the stock market.
Yeah.
Since
2020?
Since we shut down everything.
Yep.
And remember, when I think the stock market dropped 20, it was 27, 28, 2,900, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when we shut down the economy, which led to what in that time frame, in that one quarter, what was it, negative 32% growth
Right.
in
Yeah.
that year,
Yeah.
which then bounced back afterwards.
Right.
But, that shows you the kind of effect. It was like 1,700. Last I saw, it was the Dow was down, but you saw that the one, I forgot what it is. Well, we'll get to it coming up far in the bottom of the hour here. Hang on, 866-90 Red Eye.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Here is Ted Cruz from yesterday.
If the result is our trading partners jack up their tariffs and we have high tariffs everywhere, I think that is a bad outcome for America. Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers. So my hope is these tariffs are short-lived and they serve as leverage to lower tariffs across the globe.
Well, as we talked about, it doesn't seem like, that may be what happens, and you and I talked about the stock market futures right now that seem to be pretty level, and we believe it's because Trump said, well, I'm willing to negotiate. I think
in fact, it's the top story at CNBC.
Yeah.
Trump is open to negotiations on tariffs. And if that is when the markets are basically even, that's the uncertainty. Right. Basically, they're waiting to hear one way or the other, and then that's the driver one way or the other. Right. Whatever is said next. And that's the problem. Whatever might be said later this morning.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know.
And the story does say just very shortly after we had 24 hours, that none of this is a negotiation tactic at all.
Right.
And they went, okay, and making it, okay, these are going to be permanent. You could see, I saw, I saw a number of reporters following members of the Republican Senate yesterday, and they didn't seem to want to talk about it at all. Are you concerned about it? Yeah. Concerned. Well, of course you're going to be concerned because... And the problem is with all of this is, as I've stated when I talk politically, what's worse, the trade deficit or Democrats being in power again?
Right.
And that's the political. That's not economic. That's
right.
You can look at that. That's a political question. What is worse? To me, of course, the trade deficit isn't even close to Democrats being in power.
Right.
Again. But that's, I think, the political question that we asked yesterday, because when it comes down to it, that's it. Because even if I agreed with how they had rolled this out, if I agreed with every single aspect of it, I'd still be saying you're doing things that are going to hurt growth before you ensure that there's pro-growth, and you don't have any time before the midterms. And if you lose the midterms, boom. And if your goal is, if I'm to believe what you say, that there was no negotiation as of before the president said they are open to negotiation after saying they're not open to negotiations, then what you're saying is you're going to have this pressure on prices from now until you're out of office.
Yeah.
And so when you saw Grassley put in that, the bill yesterday, which basically says that, let me just see here, it's not going to pass. But let me see. The measure would require the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of such an imposition of tariffs, and for Congress to explicitly approve any new tariffs within 60 days. The bill would also allow Congress to end any tariff at any time. Now, this would be under, we've talked about where Congress, for example, in the War Powers Act, has said, here's what the president must do. Well, the president doesn't need to pay attention to that.
Right.
And we've said before, not one administration, even if they followed what the War Powers Act says, every administration has said, "Sorry, we're not going to follow. We'll follow it, but we're not required to follow it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the president is commander in chief, and that's explicit in the Constitution. When it comes to tariffs, when it comes to tariffs, the president may write the bill, as he did with the free trade agreement. His negotiators may write the bill, but Congress approves it.
Right.
And in taxes, the same thing. And then there was the debate yesterday. Well, a tariff isn't a tax. A tax isn't a tariff. Fine. Argue the minutia of that. What it is it's increasing the cost of doing business, whether it's a tax or whether it's a tariff.
Well, it is the cost of government.
It is the cost of government.
It's the cost of government policy. So we can go back to the cost of government on every level.
Yep.
And when something is implemented as policy and it has a direct effect on the consumer, which it will, then that's effectively a tax. Or you can call it whatever you want. You can call it flowers if you want, but it's a negative.
Well, the problem is, and you knew this was going to happen, and you could slowly see it yesterday with, Cruz coming out. Well, this is just very temporary fine. They're all worried because if they all support the president on this, they all go down with him.
Oh yeah.
If it doesn't work.
Well, that's that.
Yeah, if it doesn't
it's
work,
a great
right.
point. There's a united party, for the most part, behind this president. Very unlike his first term.
Yeah.
But you start seeing, if their internals start showing something for the midterm or for 28 that does not favor them and their state or district, you're going to start seeing pushback.
Let's go to the Hoover Institute that interviewed Thomas Sowell yesterday, which shocked me when I sent it to you immediately. I went, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
This brought him, and I saw somebody who posted that said he was his neighbor saying he really doesn't go out much, and it's but he talks to his wife. He sees that it's a neighbor, and and she's amazed because he really doesn't pay attention to the internet. Just like amazed how popular his interviews are.
Yeah, right.
But you go back to it. I mean, Free to Choose, even before I saw Free to Choose, which was probably 25 years ago, and it was out for 20 years. I was already a fan of the interviews that a lot of them would run on, a long time ago, would run on PBS. I'll just never forget Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman talking to the union workers, and it was on tariffs. And as they explained them, I went, oh, okay. This is economics. When you put an increase in the cost of doing business, you protect one business, they raise the price, they have less efficiency, less productivity because they have less competition. That's just economics. It's the way that it always works. That's why you see industry is extremely efficient. The products and goods and services that you get from industry and the private sector, think about what you demand in guarantees, warranties and everything else, and think of everything that you have. And if something goes wrong, how furious you are because there's an expectation of excellence in the private sector. Government, it's completely the opposite. There's no expectation that they will tell you the truth. If government was a business, they'd be out of business. They would have been sued out of business.
Yep.
And that's the problem. There is no accountability there because there is no competition in government.
If the same rules applied,
right,
people would be in jail.
Right.
And if a CEO lies or says something untruthful about something, if they're a publicly traded company, and goes in and continually lies to the stockholders, there's going to be legal ramifications on that.
Right. And the fact is some politicians may go, but for the most part, they're replaced with people that believe the same thing. Mm-hmm. Look at California. Who wants to run for governor? They're all, doesn't matter whether California is failing when you compare it to other states economically, other red states. It doesn't matter. And you see it right now with we see it right now with the Democrats. Cory Booker's just incredible. Why? Because it's a new personality and a new face who spoke for 25 hours on the same failed issues. Yeah. Because the sense competition is what forces you to excellence. And that's the reality. And if you want to look at the private sector and compare it to government, that's the concept behind tariffs. If you put tariffs and protect an industry, they have less competition, less accountability. They can raise the prices, and that's the problem. And then the people down the line that aren't protected, and these are companies and workers, they're the ones that get hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the problem. So when you use it in a retaliatory way, that's one thing. But as we found out, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. They are not. The formula has nothing to do with the tariffs that anybody puts on. It's simply the fact, and I think, did you see the National Review article from, what's his name? Pat Toomey, the former senator of Pennsylvania, that said, I knew this was coming because I've had such discussions with Trump. Trump believes that, for example, if you pay money to buy a vehicle, that you're getting ripped off if you buy the vehicle. That there's a loss in there. He goes, that's how he thinks.
Right.
And that's why you saw it had nothing to do with tariffs. It has to do with trade surpluses and trade deficits with each country.
Right. And
then the goal would be, my question would be, does Trump expect us to have equal trade with every single country?
Because that's not going to happen. That will never happen.
But here's Thomas Sowell yesterday, the interview that was done 2 days ago. Here we go. Yeah, it was recorded April 1st, I guess.
What do you make of the present President of the United States and his tariffs?
It's painful to see what a ruinous decision from back in the 1920s being repeated. Now, insofar as he's using these tariffs to get very strategic things settled, and that he is satisfied with that. But if you set off a worldwide trade war, that has a devastating history. Everybody loses because everybody follows suit, and all that happens is that you get a great reduction in international trade. The other, it's disturbing in another sense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was president in the 1930s, said that you have to try things, and if they don't work, then you admit it, you abandon that, and you go on to something else, and you try that until you come across something that does work. Now that's not a bad approach if you are operating within a known system of rules. But if you are the one who's making the rules, then all the other people have no idea what you're going to do next. And that is the formula for having people hang on to their money until they figure out what you're going to do. And when a lot of people hang on to their money, you can get results such as you got during the Great Depression of the 1930s. So if this is just a set of short-run ploys for various limited objectives, limited in time, fine, maybe. But if this is going to be the policy for 4 long years, that you're going to try this, you're going to try that, you're going to try something else, a lot of people are going to wait. I think what happened in the stock market recently, when things came down substantially for quite a while, and I note that various people are holding on to their money before they do anything because they don't know where this is going to lead.
What's he telling us? How people respond to incentive.
It's an observation.
And if they don't know, if you don't know, nobody's going to invest their money in anything if they have no idea what you're going to say tomorrow.
Yeah, we were just talking about that a few minutes ago. This is an observation as to what's going on in the economy. Yep. And the main reason, I think one of the main reasons we played is that Thomas Sowell never does interviews.
No, I know. I was shocked.
It was,
I sent it to you, and
me,
you
I'm
said,
like, whoa.
You said,
I was waiting for you to come back and go, oh, this is from years ago. And someone just posted it or something. I was waiting for that. I actually sat at my phone waiting for the follow-up. It's like, seriously? And then I was watching it, and I was like, no, this is from a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I see Peter Schiff tweeting out here.
Okay.
I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah.
Nike will not build factories in the United States to make sneakers. That would add more cost than the 40% tariffs. Plus, they need to stay competitive selling to customers in other countries that don't impose tariffs. The result will be fewer sneakers sold in the United States at much higher prices.
Yeah, it's, there are a number of things that won't be coming to the U.S. in terms of production. And that's just going to be the reality. They'll adjust, especially if all the other nations get together and say, we'll reestablish trade routes and reroute them around the U.S. and we'll do deals with each other. That's the situation we were talking about, what we should be doing against China. And China's working with other nations, including our other trade partners saying, hey, we'll work a deal. So, again, we'll see where it goes and what adjustments Trump makes on the fly, if any.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hi. What's up? Anything?
Happy Friday.
Just very quickly, you had the left jump on the fact, well, and we don't put tariffs, nothing on Russia. That's because we don't trade with them because there's sanctions on them.
Right.
You're not supposed to trade with Russia. So
right.
That's why. So it'll be an interesting day.
Yeah, it will be. I think the market's waiting to see what the next comment will be, and does that give them any sign as to where it will go? This was what I talked about a few days ago before the announcement, the official announcement on the tariffs, is that there's still uncertainty because everything can change on the fly.
Well, he probably did calm the overnight markets by saying, that, again, that it contradicted just an hour before what they had said for 24 hours, which was, this is not a negotiation tactic. These are staying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was like.
So until the next thing is.
Then it was like, okay, no, we're going to negotiate here. That was very important because the one thing I was thinking politically is if he just let it be and said nothing, and then you had tomorrow more countries announce tariffs and the stock market tank again while he's golfing in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's not going to be a good look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good thing is he's golfing because the Live Golf tournament's taking place on one of his golf tournaments. So the best part about that is nobody will be paying attention to him because it's the Live Golf tournament.
How big is the tariff against Live? Is it 10?
Well, they got a mulligan.
They get a mulligan on tariffs.
No, it's just
Actually, we're exporting to them, aren't we, in terms of players? There's the trade with Liv.
Well, that's why they're getting our product and
Right.
giving them the money.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
So it's to the advantage. But no, the Live Golf Tournament, I'd seen that the ratings and have been. They can't even pull 100,000 people to watch that golf tournament.
Wow.
Their golf tournaments in the United States. Now, maybe there'll be more interest now that this is the first one in the United States, but I heard the audience for the last one, while the regular golf tour pulls in anywhere, it all depends what's going on. Like, I think 3, 4, 5, 6 million they can pull in. Probably the Masters will pull in more here in a couple of weeks. But it's like, saw the one for Live, it was like 98,000 people are watching. And I thought to myself, MSNBC is doing better. It's like, oh, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
CNN isn't doing better. No, CNN's
Right.
even doing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wow, that's extremely low.
And where is it broadcast? Who's?
I think one of the Fox channels. I don't know if it's on Fox. Last year, CW had it. I don't know. I haven't seen. I don't know if they've been broadcasting any of the golf tournaments that have been taking place in other countries.
Right.
Because I haven't. I would notice it. I'd go by it, and I'd watch it for a couple of seconds. But it's, for me, the Live Golf Tournament is unwatchable. Couple of things. The sound is bad. The sound is not good. When you listen to the announcers, you're like, the quality isn't there. Sometimes the quality of the picture seems not to be high definition. But the thing that really, and sometimes it's fine, but I always have a problem with the audio. It's like, guys, it almost sounds like this isn't professionally done.
Right.
What's going on? It should be, when you watch a golf tournament, for example, with the Masters coming up, you'll watch it. Everything is perfect. It's just, now it is the Masters, but I mean, every shot is perfect. The audio.
The fake birds chirping.
Exactly, the fake birds. Everything is just perfect. And for most golf tournaments that are, that the PGA has, the actual broadcast quality is great. The other thing with the Live tournament, there's just, I cannot watch it. When I turn it on and there's a guy in shorts hitting out of a bunker and there's rap music playing in the background or rock music. I don't want to make it sound like, I don't want to be accused. We were already accused of being racist already today. If it's rock music, rap music, any music, it could be classical music. It's the same beef that I had with the NBA, where I stopped going to any NBA games.
You don't need to add to the game.
20 years ago. Don't add to the game. Don't scream at me. Don't add music. The golf is enough. The basketball is enough. And if you ever heard it, it's when I used to get every maybe twice a year, I'd get real good seats. Instead of getting season tickets and sitting up in the third deck, 500 feet away from the players, when I could watch it on TV and be, a couple of feet away. I would get good seats. And the seats would be, I never paid over $200 a seat, but I think a couple times I paid $150 for a seat. We'd be able to get it at the last minute and be down maybe 10 rows from the floor. And it was great because I got to see the action. And I used to go, when I was, just a little bit of background, when I was growing up, the Buffalo Braves played in Buffalo. And we used to go to the games all the time. And you could get, our tickets were like $3-4. And if we wanted to sit in the best seats, they were 12. So we'd save from our paper route maybe once a year and get it. Well, I can't afford to go I could, but the return on the investment isn't there. But then I just got frustrated with the NBA when everybody's screaming. And then they started playing music. And then a couple times the players would be taking the ball down the court and you could hear a beat. Boom, 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 boom. Don't add to, I don't need I don't need anything added to the sports that I watch. And then what really got me to say forget it with NBA games was the public address announcer screaming at you. And I'll never forget going with a great friend of mine, and the best thing is this is remember when Don Nelson was the coach?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, she asked me, she said, and she was younger than me, because I'm only interested in younger women.
Well, at your age now, there's really not much of a choice. They're all younger, aren't
Everybody is younger. Yes. My favorite joke out there was, I really was intrigued with this whole cougar thing. Go, wow, how seductive that is, a cougar.
Yeah.
And then I realized at my age,
They're all dead.
A cougar is 108.
No such thing as cougars.
But she said, I'll never forget, she said, where did Don Nelson, what's his history?
Yeah. How did he get to be the coach?
And Don Nelson was probably younger than I am now, but he looked ancient.
Yeah.
And I said, well, he played with the Boston Celtics. I said, I saw him play as a player. I'll never forget. My friend Allie looks at me with this look on her face, and she said, how the hell old are you? You saw him play as a player? And I said, yeah. I remember he got kicked out of a game once,
right.
And he passed by us, and we said hi, and he gave us a look like, get the hell out of my face. It was great.
Yeah.
But we used to go, see the old Buffalo Braves. But I told her one time, I said, when they tell me to stand and cheer, I'm not going to. I'm not going to take orders at a game. I was having fun with her, of course. But that's when I did that. I did a whole radio bit way back then about the NBA and why I don't want to go, because they tell you they tell you it's time to cheer. They tell you why to cheer. They tell you how to cheer, and then they chastise you for not cheering. And I went through the whole thing about why are they doing this like we're idiots? When I used to go to a game, it would be dun 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 dun, and you all knew, yay! When it was time to everybody to say defense, there was nothing. The crowd figured it out itself. All right, you were down by 10 points. Now you're down by 4. The other team is bringing the ball down the court. The crowd figured out itself. Let's yell defense, defense, defense. What the hell happened? And then I figured it out. The NBA is popular in all liberal cities. So the people that run the NBA teams believe that liberals are idiots and don't know even how to respond in a game, so they have to instruct them every cheer of the way. They have to instruct them. It's time to cheer. Now is how to cheer. And now you're not cheering loud enough. I need to chastise you for not cheering.
Comedian Greg Warren does a great bit on college sports. And he says, the thing I don't get is, like the chants, the whole thing is, let's just start here. O-H, and then in the audience you hear, I-O. He says, see? It takes more than one person to spell 4 letters. And then he goes into the Mizzou and it's such a funny bit. And he's having fun. He's just having fun. But with professional sports, for me, basketball, there was nothing like the sound of the game. The court, the ball.
The sneakers.
On the hardwood. The sneakers.
You could hear them.
Running, the thunder of the running, the rushing to one end and then back to the other. And that, to me, was everything. It was everything.
Well, I was able to, sit down near the floor. And this is in the 70s NBA. And I saw everybody play. I saw, Jabbar play. I saw Pete Maravich play. People said, you saw Pete Maravich? Yeah, I saw Pete Maravich play. Old sloppy.
When the basket was actually a basket.
Nate Archibald, Walt Frazier, Willis Reed, Will Chamberlain, Jerry West. I saw everybody play. And you could hear them talking.
Yeah.
You could hear them get angry at each other.
Oh, yeah.
You heard the sneakers. You heard the sound of the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's why I always loved the sport of basketball, but they took that love away from me very quickly.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because when we went to see the Spurs play the New Orleans Jazz, Utah outlawed jazz years ago. I don't know how they even kept the name. It's not even allowed. The music isn't even allowed in Utah.
Only if the Osmonds do it.
Exactly. And we have lots of friends in Utah, and we love you.
We were kidding.
But the
a long time ago, we interviewed Donny Osmond.
we did. Yep.
Remember?
Yeah, and the Osmonds own 90% of Utah.
And it was when
Dick Clark
died. Yeah.
And
great
interview.
And Donny, he would only come on for a couple of minutes. He ended up like being on for almost an hour. Because we asked him about his life and everything else, and he just said, "Hey guys, if you're ever in Vegas, look me up."
Yeah,
and I think he loved the interview. He was a really good guy.
Yeah,
so
great guy.
We're just kidding. Utah.
We love Utah, and the Osmonds, population wise, they're about 90% of Utah. So but I remember, Michael Irvin, and some of the other players, and hearing their voices, and it wasn't on TV. I was sitting, we were fairly close, but Mark Brell, a friend of mine, and he had a camera. I didn't have a camera, but he had a camera. Come on, let's go get a shot. And we kind of got down a little bit closer we just walked down a little bit more so he could get a shot, with his camera. And you're hearing them, vocalize during the game. That to me was, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm right here. Right? Because everything else was television. If you were able to watch a game on television, otherwise, it was them commenting after a game or something like that.
Yeah.
And you didn't even get to watch that all the time.
No, you didn't. NBA was actually tape delaying games, I think, as late as the early 80s.
Right. Yeah.
Think about that.
Right.
And you didn't get to watch every game. No. Every game was not on TV like it is today.
Right. It's like the live show for a band. You would see their picture and everything else.
Yeah.
But pre-MTV, the midnight special, they'd make appearances here and there. But you didn't see them all the time. So when you went and saw a live show, it's like, wow, they're right there. And same thing with basketball when you went to see a pro sports.
My favorite moment, though, of going to those games, we took our paper route allowances, whatever, and we bought tickets like 3 rows or maybe 4 or 5 rows from the floor.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, and we're behind the Boston Celtics bench, and they're playing the Buffalo Braves. And it's Tommy Heinsohn, if you remember Tommy Heinsohn, the late coach of the Boston Celtics. And it was the John Havlicek team, the Dave Cowens team back then. And a guy behind us in the row behind us is sitting there cursing at the Celtics. You're a bunch of bums, Heinsohn. You're a blankety blank, MFer, everything in the world. Tommy Heinsohn calls a timeout. He's got a cigarette in his mouth. You could still smoke in public buildings. Yeah. Coaches would smoke. He turned around, he called a timeout. The timeout was just to turn around and stare at the guy behind us. Except Tommy Heinsohn is staring at us, and all the rest of the Boston Celtics are looking at me and my buddy Dave, who I played basketball with. This is my senior year of high school. And we're like, why are you looking at us? We turn around. The guy behind us ducked down behind the seats. And we're like going, no. We're pointing behind. It's the guy behind us. We weren't doing it. And then Heinsohn got this, cigarette in his mouth, just takes it out, his hand, turns around, and they huddle. Never forget that. What a great moment.
By the way, I think I said Michael Irvin a minute ago. That was a force of habit from being a Dallas Cowboys fan in the past. George Gervin.
With the Iceman, right?
Yeah, the Iceman.
Yeah.
George Gervin, he was the key player on the team. He was in my eyes, the star of the team at the time. And hearing them vocalize, hearing them talk during the game, it was just, that was insane that I was that close to the action. The closest I've been, to that action. And it's, when you cover it up with everything else, you take away from that. It's
exactly.
I don't know why they do it, but they do it.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Now, one thing that Eric and I hate is just sometimes raw political rhetoric.
Yeah, right.
We just hate it.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Makes me want to throw all the bums out.
So, sometimes, though, we love it.
Mm-hmm.
Here is Senator Kennedy
We got to work him in. I mean, it's not a full week. It's not a complete week if we don't get him in.
Yes. Here's Senator Kennedy on tariffs.
Tariffs are like whiskey. A little whiskey under the right circumstances can be refreshing. Too much whiskey under the wrong circumstances, and you end up drunk as a goat.
Number one, that's great. Number two, what kind of goats is he hanging out with?
Well, whiskey, the whiskey that most people drink is American made.
Oh no, that was the actually the picture that the media used when it came to Europe and Canada, and this all the whiskey that goes over there and everything else. Look, I don't drink, but my thought is, if you're drinking, I mean, I know there are connoisseurs out there, but let's face it. If they don't have access to one thing, in terms of alcohol, they're probably going to find something else. There's probably something else on the shelf. You know what I mean? And again, I got to get back to the drunk as a goat. Look, I've seen goats. At the truck show last week, somebody had their pet goat with them, walking their pet goat on a leash inside the truck show. That was awesome. It was perfectly sober. It was a sober goat. What we need to look at is the problem right now that we may have with goats. And I think Senator Kennedy has pointed that problem out.
I'm sure glad this segment is ending. I think we're done with the goat talk.
Yeah, well, he started it. He needs to put down the bomb.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. All of the books that are coming out about Biden now. And I did see that, what's his name? The book where Klain was quoted, Ron Klain was quoted as saying, obviously, the president was having a problem. Did you hear he backed off saying, well, I didn't say there's cognitive problems. He just had yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. It's like, stop it. This was on CNN yesterday, and this is Michael Singleton, the Republican consultant, on with everybody else about Biden.
And so should his advisors. I mean, talk about a big cover-up. I mean, we've been talking a lot about Donald Trump lately. I just want to ask a simple question. Who in the heck was running the country? If the president's mental acuity was in question and some days he's on and some days he's off, was the guy really capable of doing the job day to day? I honestly really question that. And I think a lot of Democrats who said at the time, oh, Joe Biden is the fittest guy in the world. He could do backflips. He could jump into the pool, run marathons, do 100 push-ups. When every freaking person who saw Joe Biden said, there's no in hell this guy is physically fit. But they told us, don't believe your lying eyes because we're with him every single day.
It was something we said. They wanted you to not believe what you were seeing. Yeah, I love that.
You know what got blown out of the water real quick? Biden coming back to be on the campaign and fundraising trail.
Yeah, no, when I saw that story, I said, no, he's not. No, he's not. Because who's going to have him? Who's going to ask him? Who was it? Was it Beto that said in Texas he didn't want Obama to campaign for him? Well, who in the world would ask Joe Biden to campaign for them? Nobody. Nobody in the right mind. Yeah, he's going to be on the campaign trail. He's going to be at fundraisers. Nope. Nope.
We think it should be Walsh and Harris.
Look, it's the party kicked him out in the middle of the campaign, and he's still the rock star?
Right.
He was never the rock star.
They told a sitting president, get out!
Get out! Go sit down. Oh, he's going to be coming back to do fundraisers and campaigning. No, he's not.
He wants to be a part of the resurgence of the Democratic Party.
No, he doesn't. That's not going to happen. You're not just smoking crack. You're smoking Hunter Biden crack, if you think that.
Is it better quality? Or
Oh, yeah, he gets the good stuff. Imported from China, which now has a tariff on it, so yeah. He's paying more.
Fentanyl won't
but
stop.
He gets his money from
It'll
China.
just be more expensive.
Now, here's the question. The money that the Biden family imports from China, is that going to have a tariff on it? I got to know these things. How does it work? Yeah. I love this idea of, that's like nothing, because the idea is, well, let's go back to pretending nothing was wrong all along. No. Everybody has already moved on. Jake Tapper wrote a book. Even Morning Joe moved on.
I'm waiting for Morning Joe to write a book.
Write a book.
How the media covered up.
Yes. How the media.
Joe Biden's cognitive problems by Joe Scarborough.
And inevitably, he'd have to do what his colleague did. And she, what's her name, calling her own network racist.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so he would have to go after his
Joy
own
Reid.
network. No, not Joy Reid. It was, what's her name, the one that's going back to part-time.
No. You're right. I just assumed.
Actually, Joy Reid may have also.
I apologize. I just assumed if it was a racial statement, it had to come from Joy Reid.
Yeah. So what's her name? Who's about to go back into semi-retirement? I guess. We're getting
Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
I think that's coming up here. In about a month, whatever it is. I think she's covering the first 100 days. Yeah, because she can't fill 1 hour a night. That's why she only does 1 hour a week. Even Jon Stewart, same thing. The liberals have nothing. But, yeah.
And they're both younger than us, aren't they?
I think so, yeah.
Well, younger than me.
Not younger than – I don't think they're younger than me. I don't think so. Maddow, maybe. She looks younger than me. A lot of people
52.
look younger than me.
She's 52.
Okay, yeah, she's younger than yeah. Stewart's 65-ish?
62.
He's 62?
Yep.
Oh. Sorry, John. Didn't mean to do that. He looks 65-ish. I had someone say that to me one time. Because I mentioned, it was just a passing conversation, somebody I didn't know, and we were talking about things, and I mentioned that I have 8 grandchildren. You have 8 grandchildren. Wow, look, and she actually said this, look, I'm not trying to hit on you or anything. You don't look a day over 62. It was such a funny moment. I had to lean into it. I said, that's great. I'm 58. I was 58 at the time. And I'm 58. She goes, oh. And then that was it. It was like, oh, yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks for not hitting on me. But if Morning Joe getting back to Morning Joe, if he wrote the book, he would have to do what Maddow did and go after his own network. The morning show on MSNBC had it wrong. They covered it up the whole time and blah, 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 blah. Everybody knows now. Everybody admits. I'll say this. We all knew. They knew then. But everybody now admits it's over. It's nobody was in charge to answer the question. And yet everybody was in charge. It depends on what they were doing. Jake Sullivan was in charge of some things. Jill Biden maybe was in charge of other things. My question would be, well, in fact, it is the question anybody should have. How many actions were taken outside of authority?
Right. Well, who was running the White House?
Yep.
And that's a totally serious question that he brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden, obviously, because Ron Klain talks about it in the debate.
Right.
Well, you're planning for the debate. He was all over the place. He couldn't focus on anything.
Remember what Speaker Johnson said when he went to sit down with him and he had a conversation on what was it? What was the move that he made? And he told Biden, well, you did this. And then Biden said, well, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Yeah,
and he said, I don't think the president in that moment, then president, was lying. He said, I think he believed that. And now the question is, my question would be,
who was running the White House?
With the auto pen thing and everything else. Well, wait a minute. What if him questioning Speaker Johnson in that conversation wasn't so much about his mental acuity as it was about the auto pen thing and somebody else doing that and him not remembering or also not remembering? In other words, how many actions were taken during the Biden administration that fall under the authority of the president and not anybody else? And they did that. Those questions must be answered.
Well, you think about the Biden thing, it's as big or probably bigger a scandal because you're talking about your mind than Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In the wheelchair.
Yeah,
where the press, everybody knew, everybody in the press knew that he was in the wheelchair.
Right.
They really couldn't walk.
Right.
But the fact is, that didn't affect his mind.
No.
But they kept that a secret just because of the imagery would be bad. But with Biden, we're talking about his mind. Now, the thing is, because the story never got reported, a lot of Americans did not know how incapacitated Roosevelt was.
Right.
But that didn't
didn't have the media like you have today.
Right.
It's not everywhere.
With Biden, though, everybody knew that the media was lying.
Right.
That's the difference.
Because we could see it.
Yeah.
Because of the media
yeah.
today, we could observe
Right.
it. And as, he just mentioned in that audio cut, they wanted you to believe not believe your lying eyes,
now,
as we've said.
The only thing with that you could question Roosevelt's mind was on December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and he had a sinus infection and was on cocaine. That's how they relieve the symptoms of a sinus infection.
Right. And still today.
Basically, they do.
No, I was going to say still today. And as an adult, Hunter Biden has had 0 sinus infection.
Okay. Cocaine.
Sorry,
still,
that took too long.
Yeah, you did.
I went around the block to pull in the driveway on that one.
This is a professional operation.
I know.
You need to be better.
I know. I can't workshop as much.
Let me lecture you.
Yeah. No, that one's
on
going.
Let me lecture you on not making mistakes.
That one's going in the crapper right now. It's over.
No, but I knew you were headed there. It was like, well, cocaine was in the White House again.
Exactly. Right.
No, that's
that was on the History Channel.
It was on the History Channel, yeah. Now, they don't know how much he was on. They don't know how he was affected that day, but that's how you cured. Not cured. Because they couldn't cure it at that point.
Right.
They still didn't have the antibiotics, to get rid of it, so they relieved the symptoms. And then basically the stick with the cotton ball at the end, stick it in liquid cocaine and shove it up your nose. And that's what they did on December 7th. So it didn't seem if nobody's ever questioned his decisions they made that day. But
he was cleaning his residence with a toothbrush later that day. So there was that. It's like, yeah, maybe we'll lower the dosage.
Yeah, but that was a difference. People didn't know. Everybody knew Biden's cognitive abilities were gone a long time before the debate.
Yeah.
We knew it.
Yeah.
But the thing that blows my mind is when he be out at places or give speeches and they put the reflecting tape so he could see basically, be glowing.
Right.
So he knew where to walk.
Right.
Wow.
Well, remember when at first they had to kind of lead him and watch him to make sure he didn't wander off.
And the thing is, I look at, my dad, for example, who at 99 is starting to have some cognitive problems. If he was president of the United States and I was his assistant, I'd say you need to step down.
Yes.
Because he does have great cognitive moments, and at other times, he's not sure what's going on.
Right.
And as much as I love him, it's like, no, you couldn't do that job.
We said this about Biden. We said this about, first of all, if your family, you want to focus on caring for them.
Yeah.
Many of us are now dealing with this. For me, it's on multiple levels, and we become caretakers, and that's just what you do as you get older. And if you're fortunate enough to still have your parents with you, quite often you have to become their caretaker and deal with whatever ailments they have, including dementia. So, as a caretaker, as a family member, and a caretaker, you want to take care of them. But in that role, it is critical that, especially if you're aware of it, you owe it to everybody else. You owe it to this nation to intervene, to make sure that there is a remedy, a quick remedy to this, and they are not leading this country because they're not capable. And now everybody admits it. And it's a very serious question that's going on right now. What actions were taken during the Biden administration, and who was in charge?
Yeah. Who made decisions?
Right.
Who made the decision on so many of those pardons?
866-90-RED-I.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up following the top of the hour, Maine voters oppose the governor and back Trump on the trans athletes issue. We'll get to that. You saw the story, and listeners were hitting me on it going, you haven't talked about Neil Young yet.
No.
Neil Young fears that he will be banned from the United States after his criticism of Trump. He's a citizen.
I don't see why he would fear that. Why? I mean, do they just want to be the victim? Just say, I'm going to be a victim?
I think so.
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Well, saw this headline, and we need some expert advice on it. I saw that with the tariffs that the president has put on, the tariffs are now greater. The average tariffs the United States charges is now greater than in 1930 in the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that were roughly 20%. The current tariffs are 24%.
On the average.
On the average.
Yeah.
Let's, in fact, play this audio cut here from one of the keen economic minds ever.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government? Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
So there you go. There's the analysis on that. That's
Anyone? Anyone?
I just remembered there's probably a longer audio cut where he talks about voodoo. Remember he did voodoo economics?
Right, yeah. That's from the movie Robert Mueller's Day Off.
And that was all ad lib. By the way.
Yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah. Apparently, I think Ben Stein was good friends with John Hughes. And John Hughes wanted him to do an off-camera, like a roll call of the students or something.
Yeah.
And then he just said, hey, just do something, say anything that comes to your mind. And so Ben Stein, being, the political commentator, economist that he is, decided to do stuff on the Laffer curve and the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And it's the beautiful part of it is how he says it in that dry fashion, and then the close-up of the camera on all the students' faces.
And the whole, it became, it's still today a catchphrase. Anyone?
Bueller.
If you're asking a question, anyone? It's, that was great.
By Ben Stein, who's now 80 years old, has referred to it as the happiest day of his life.
I love that. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you hear him, when you hear and see him, you say, what a great actor. He wasn't really acting that much. He talks like that.
Right. That's how he talks.
That's how he talks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow.
Am I being accused here of just setting that up just so I could hear Ben Stein? Well, you are correct.
It's okay. We can do that.
But
anyone? Is Gary being accused? Anyone? Yeah. Wow.
All right. A strong majority of the people of Maine do not think that transgender identity boys should be allowed to compete in girls' sports, in stark contrast to the position of Maine Democrats and the governor, Governor Janet Mills. The University of New Hampshire Survey Center poll found that 64% of Maine residents do not believe that boys should play girls' sports, which is a current battle that the state is fighting against President Donald Trump and his executive orders declaring that biological reality of the two sexes and barring males from playing on female sports teams. The survey found that only 29% of the people of Maine think that transgender identifying boys should be allowed to play on girls' teams, while 7% are unsure. Huh? How can you be unsure on that one? You know what? You're afraid to answer the question.
I was going to say, you know what you feel on that. You don't want to say it.
56% of Democrats, 14% of independents, and 1% of Republicans back boys being allowed to compete against girls in sports. The survey was conducted March 20th to the 24th before the Trump administration began freezing funds on Wednesday in response to Governor Mills' refusal to comply with President Trump's orders. I want to make this clear. They make it sound like that the executive order is something that Trump did on his own. No. It's backed by the law of Congress of the original meaning of Title IX, which the Obama administration started that effort to change the definition of girls.
Yeah. Right.
Which meant we're going to change it to Obama, the smartest man in the world, right? Remember that? The smartest president we've ever had. I think it's a good idea to challenge the definition of a female, of women, and say women can be men because I'm the smartest guy in the world.
Yeah.
I'm the smartest guy in the world. And I also ponder and grapple these things.
And at one time, I was best friends with George Clooney.
Oh my gosh! Oh, that's the other good stuff being written in the books about how Obama came out publicly for Harris, but did everything possible. He didn't like her being there at all.
Yeah,
as the nominee. Just love it.
Wow.
Since it's a Friday, it really is interesting because the excitement the Democrats feel towards Cory Booker, even though there was no buzz on that by the time we got to yesterday. But it's so dang funny. And I don't know, should the delusional audio cut of the week, you'd think it should be Frank Luntz?
Because of the swing of where Frank Luntz most often is on observation. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you haven't heard.
That's a pretty broad swing from where he usually is to this delusional.
Yeah, that audio cut went viral. Yeah. Here it is. Here we go. Ready?
But are they energized in running in a circle and fighting with each other, or are they energized in a direction?
They're going crazy right now. And they're going crazy because they don't see leadership in their own party. And I want to emphasize, what Cory Booker did over the last 24 hours may have changed the course of political history.
You should see the anchor on News. I don't know who the anchor is on News Nation. He rolled his eyes almost like, are you out of your freaking mind?
Right. Are you talking about the same Cory Booker?
Well, the Democrats are so desperate. I mean, he threw out the only accurate thing he said is that the Buffalo Bills are the only football team actually that plays in New York.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I don't think that anybody in the United States, in New York, in the world, or the universe were looking for clarification on that.
Right.
On that point.
Right.
We played that the other day.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
What the? It's like that's when Booker started drifting. Let me throw this in here.
Mm-hmm.
But he threw out the same old crap. Open borders.
Yeah.
The racism of identity politics, the misogyny of the radical transgender movement. It's the same thing. Right. Nothing was new there.
Right.
It's just we need a different person. And I think they live in the bubble of today. They don't realize how he bombed a few years ago.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Let's reintroduce Cory Booker to maybe people who weren't paying attention not that long ago.
When he was Spartacus.
Yeah, with the crazy eyes. Kind of did the crazy eyes during the 25-hour thing.
Yeah, he did.
A couple of times.
Well, that's why the Babylon Bee did that headline.
Yeah.
Of the 25-hour speech warning, obviously, of the danger of methamphetamines.
Yeah, exactly. Talking for 25 hours, Hunter Biden's like, and? So? It's because you need to get the others basically out of the news cycle, I guess. I don't know. But the party, I think, still lacks direction for 28. I don't know what the Democrats do. But I think right now everything's focused on the midterm, and they're thinking maybe 28 will just naturally come together. But on the issues, they've got nothing. Everyone who's talking about who it might be in 28 avoids all of the issues.
All right, I went to the Babylon Bee because I hadn't looked at it in a couple of days.
All right.
Breaking news, Cory Booker's filibuster record broken by your wife.
To be clear, honey, that was the Babylon Bee. Not me.
You laughed, though.
Yeah, because it's funny.
She'll say, honey, you laughed.
And it's funny because it's true. Now, that was me. I own that one.
This one here. Nation, this is actually heartwarming, though. Nations, this is probably true. The nation's men honor Val Kilmer by quoting Tombstone all day long, like usual.
Exactly.
That is true.
No, the quotes are awesome.
Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers are bankrupted as Trump places 25% tariff on Japanese players. That goes back to the live thing we talked about before.
Yeah.
Genius Trump tricks Democrats into hating taxes.
That's funny.
That is funny. Well, the interesting thing is I saw a lot of Trump surrogates posting Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, all these Democrats who are completely pro-tariff. And they're promoting, see where they stood, And my first thought was, you see that you're promoting what liberal Democrats have wanted for ages as a good thing. Did you realize that?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's funny, though.
Well, it's, again, the crew over there at the Babylon Bee. Genius stuff here. Genius stuff. But tell me what came out of the Booker thing, aside from some really great memes and stories at the Babylon Bee.
Nothing. It's just they have nothing to hold on to. They're desperate. I mean, they're looking for anything.
Yeah, right. And you don't. Again, you're just not going to. That's not going to resonate with anyone. He talked for 25 hours. Oh, at the most, the most positive thing you could say is, "Oh, wow." I mean, that's it. Oh, he talked for 25 hours. Nobody cares.
My favorite one of the week, though. One of my favorites from the Babylon Bee. Actual Nazi struggling to stand out now that everyone is a Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
With the left accusing more people of being Nazis than ever before, local Nazi Chuck is struggling to stand out.
Chuck. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, they're funny.
Yeah,
they are. 866-98 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Looking at other news that's out there. Interesting because you and I were looking at the whole DEI situation where some companies and schools are just changing the name.
Right.
And this was a National Review, George Leaf's column. Most of our college officials are deep-dyed progressives who don't want to abandon their beloved forms of indoctrination.
Right.
The Trump administration is saying that their diversity programs will be regarded as cause for investigation by the Department of Education. Will school officials avoid trouble by ditching their problematic courses? The evidence suggests that they won't give in to the administration, rather like the massive resistance to desegregation in the South following Brown versus a Board of Education. In an article today in the Martin Center, Ashlyn Warda looks at colleges in North Carolina and finds that they are not dropping mandatory diversity courses. Looking at many courses, she concludes it's nearly impossible for students to avoid DEI material. The UNC leadership is playing word games to pretend that it's complying with the Trump order, just what everybody expected. They should do then what they are doing to Maine right now. Stop the funding.
Right.
That's, and you hear that from conservatives now saying, okay, enough talk. You're in power. They're saying they're not going to do it. They're flouting what the law is.
Right.
They're flouting civil rights law in the United States, which you and I said, by the way, if you've been a long-time listener to the show or just the last couple of years, we said DEI's got to go away.
Right.
Because it's against U.S. civil rights law.
Yeah.
You can't do what they're doing.
Right.
It's against the law.
And they don't care.
They don't care. And so you pull their funding.
This also backs what we've been saying about the agenda. The agenda's not going away. You just move on. The left is very good about changing the names and the terminology along the way. They do it on the fly all the time. So DEI is wrong. DEI becomes the hot button, right? Well, we'll call it something else. We'll just move on. And we're not going to call it a stated policy. We're not going to have a big, huge rollout of it. It will just be, hey, here's the policy.
Right. Here are the courses.
Right. And that was always going to be the case with liberals who are hell-bent. You have to enforce it.
Well, especially on the university campuses where the vast majority of the faculty, we're talking 90% plus, are liberal.
Well, remember with the calling of the, in the past with, different things, wow, that the president of the university needs to stand down. They need to be fired. They need to quit. Well, who do you think is going to take their job? Who do you think is going to be next? It's not going to change the culture at the university.
No.
And changing their policy, the DEI, or the name of the policy, isn't going to change the agenda. The agenda moves forward.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You can hear it bubbling right now. Conservatives furious at the proposed Senate bill for the budget, which they say adds $5.8 trillion to the debt.
Wow. And
there really isn't any cuts. And that's the whole point that we have said from the very, very beginning. We started out with the whole Doge thing and $5,000, remember, coming back to every American. And that's long gone. You don't hear that anymore. And we said, stop it. And then we heard I remember for us, it was when we heard, okay, we're saving right now $4 billion a day. And you and I said, well, then you're saving $1.46 trillion a year. Right. Easy to figure out. And if you are, well, then we expect to see some serious cutting in the budgets, especially the projected budgets over the next 10 years.
Right.
The reconciliation, then what the budget is going to be that they need to have by October 1st. We're going to need some cuts. You don't see them.
No.
You don't see them at all. And also the urgency of the tax cuts was a conversation that had Steve Forbes on with Guy Benson on Fox News, and they talked about that. Here we go.
Are you surprised, as I am, Steve, that Republicans in Congress, I know they keep saying we're going to get it done, it's important. There doesn't seem to be across the board the type of urgency in warning the American people that if this doesn't happen, there's the biggest tax increase in history across the board. I feel like that is like banner headline number one.
And that should have been the theme on day one. There is a lack of urgency on that, and the typical family is going to have a $3,000, $4,000, $2,000, $4,000 tax increase. And most people, polls show this, most people don't know what's in store for them if this thing isn't done. And why aren't they proclaiming that every single day? View ads on it. And so far, the White House has not pushed this potential tax cut the way they did in their first term. And so they got to get their act together and start pushing it big and make the point that you precisely made, a massive tax increase, not just the rich, but small and medium businesses, and every single middle-class household in this country is going to get slammed and slammed hard if that bill doesn't get passed.
We know in the House, they're actually talking about raising taxes in order to pay for the, by the way, in the Senate bill, I didn't check. Because I don't care about anything else. It's all about me.
The Social Security thing?
Well, yeah, what else matters except, me getting a break.
Yeah, what am I thinking?
All I want's what's coming to me. All I want is my fair share.
Yeah.
My favorite line. It's really amazing. Only I could pick out a favorite line from a Charlie Brown Christmas.
I think my favorite line from Charlie Brown in general is, ugh!
Which I could make into an example or a narrative on the pathology of dependency.
Yeah, well.
All I want is what's coming to me. All I want is my fair share.
Mm-hmm. And my ugh, I could relate to what's going on Capitol Hill right now. So,
well, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get. I don't know how they're going to get this thing through conservatives. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know where they're going to go on it. But you can see this is bubbling up. Two things. Are they going to get all the tax cuts? And are they going to get the tax cuts if they don't get the cuts in spending?
Right.
And that's a huge deal. Because could you imagine, and I don't know what's going to happen, but could you imagine if the tariffs stayed the same and at the end of the year, taxes went up?
Yeah.
If that happens, without question, Republicans lose the House.
Oh, easy, yeah.
In 2026.
Yeah,
it's gone.
Yeah, I think so.
And they lose a ton of credibility.
Well, look, typically continuing resolutions are a nothing burger. But if you think about it, they really were, for the Democrats, it was the beginning of the end for Chuck Schumer. And for the GOP, it was the setting up of the big battle on pretty much everything. Any bills they want to get done, not just, in the Senate, but in the House. How are you going to get reconciliation done? How are you going to get, where is, if you break it down, we've been saying that this is Trump's agenda. But right now, everything is focused on tariffs, right? The concern is tariffs when it comes to the economy. Tax cuts are a big part of the economy. If you don't get this done by the end of the year, you're going to have a major, major problem on the economy, which was number one right there with the border with voters in November.
Well, I mean, look, part of the problem with the White House is the things that they are promoting. Which are the continuing the tax cuts and everything else. Mm-hmm. They should be out there every day talking about that to push Congress in that particular direction. And the same thing with the whole Doge thing. Doge is, as I said, to me, Doge is the gutsiest thing that I've ever seen a president do domestically. And it will be the best thing if they can even make any cuts that I have seen a president do domestically. It will be the worst thing ever done domestically if they don't follow through on it and push something through Congress.
Right. Yeah.
Because it is, you think about it. And we talked about, when it was brought. Now, let's be intellectually honest. The president didn't bring up the $5,000 check from Doge. That actually came up from Elon Musk. He brought that up. And when we brought that up, or somebody asked the question to him, oh, could we get money back, like $5,000 or something? He agreed to it. Then the president jumped on it. And then there was pushback to it saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? And that was coming from Doge. As you remember, 5,000. They don't talk about that at all anymore. That's gone. And we said, don't promise the American people something that you can't deliver on. Right. Don't do that. Right. And so they backed off on that. Now, this week, beginning of this week, they're talking about, with the tariffs. There's got to be a dividend that we give back from the tariffs that we collect to the American public. And it's like the first thing, well, wait a minute, if you do it, you're going to have a slowdown. You're going to have a slowdown in the economy. If you actually believe you're going to collect $600 billion a year and you do that, that means you're keeping the tariffs long term. There's going to be a slowdown. There's going to be less money going into government coffers because the economy is not expanding.
Right.
And you're promising people are going to get a check back when that's never going to get through Congress. Why do you keep throwing that out, that you're going to send them back money? Because when you say that, you're assuming then that the tariffs are going to stay permanently. That's a message that, whether it was, Thomas Sowell or Ted Cruz or, Senator Kennedy, all brought up. If these are short-term, fine. Well, if you're talking about a dividend next year, you're talking about the tariffs are going to stay. These are all the contradicting messages that are all over the place. That for 24 hours it was, this isn't a negotiation. This is what's going to happen. We're slapping these tariffs on. And all of a sudden, last night, the president, we're willing to negotiate all of this, and you just don't know where they are. And the president has to sell all this. The president has to sit there and say, we cannot be talking about, we got trillions of dollars of savings. None of it will be any budget that we see in the next couple of years.
No,
no. The people are going to look at you and say, well, then you did nothing. It was all talk and no action.
Right. What'd you do with it? You set it up, you put it in motion, and where'd it go? Oh, I said it yesterday, I think. There has to be a payoff. There's got to be a payoff. And you want that payoff early on as you come in for on the economy. I mean, the talk about the $5,000, you don't have to go there. None of that has to happen. All you have to do is show, and this is why we said, you come in, you tackle the tax cuts and everything else first. Then you move on tariffs. But I think there's so much noise over tariffs right now. I think that's part of the reason the party can't really talk about what's going on with the tax situation. Is because, all right, where do you go with it? You should be promoting this. Because if they don't get it done, that's going to be a double hit. And again, I have great confidence in the GOP to not get things done. The more things change, the more things stay the same. And here we are again.
Now, there's a lot of challenges between now and the end of the year that are going to come up. You look at the Senate bill, there's no way. I don't see how the conservative part
caucus.
of the House, the conservative caucus.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how they approve this. You're not going to be able to get the votes.
Right.
Chip Roy already said once, I'll
see that, and that's what I was getting at on the continuing resolution.
Right. Well, who was the one? Wait a minute, who's the one that they wanted to run against? Was that Chip Roy?
That was Chip Roy. They wanted to primary Chip Roy.
But did Chip Roy eventually vote for the CR?
I think he eventually did, but he got a lot of heat online before then. But then you look at the setup is, okay, great, or the idea is, listen, go along on the CR and then get what you want later? Are they going to get what they want now? That's the question. Was it Massey? That was the no vote?
It was Massey.
Yeah.
It was Massey. That was it.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying it, because it's driving me nuts as you were talking there. I'm like, wait a minute, who was it? Because then it was Massey who said, no, we need to be cutting, we need to be cutting, we need to be cutting. It was like, okay, we need to primary him because he's a rhino. It's like, well, then what's the definition of a rhino anymore?
Well,
is a rhino somebody who says we need to be serious about cutting?
Once again,
you need to get out of the Republican Party.
Fiscal conservatives are carved out, and they're going to be the bad guy here. Bad guys and gals. I really, that's what the CR usually doesn't stand out, but it set in motion this coming battle.
Yeah.
Because
there's no way the conservative caucus wants anything to do with that Senate bill. I guarantee. If they do, I can't read minds, but if they do, they're no longer the conservative caucus.
Right. Right. And what do you do about that? You don't have the margin.
Yeah.
Even with the recent Florida wins, you don't have the margin. You just don't.
But the president has to promote you can't sit there and promote every day the incredible stuff Doge is doing, and then on the budget, whether it's the October 1st budget, the president's budget, or this 10-year framework of the budget that they pass all the time under reconciliation, where none of it exists in there.
Right.
You just can't. You cannot do it after all the publicity that you put in what Elon Musk is doing.
Right.
Because then the next question is, if you saved all this money, where are we spending it?
Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it?
If we're not cutting, if the debt's
you found it, you can see it, you point to it, and you talk about it, and you did nothing?
Can't do that.
No.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Well, our show ends in an hour. And after the show is over, you may not get to listen to all 5 hours. A lot of people, we're basically their sleeping pill at midnight.
Been known to put some people to sleep.
But then we wake people up, too.
We do.
So good. We can be soothing, and then we can be your alarm clock.
For instance, when it's time to go to a commercial, we wake up our production crew.
Yes. We're better than a sleeping pill and more addictive. When our show ends, we record it all and we put it on our podcast, which is on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you cannot listen to one of our great radio stations live for some reason, whatever that would be, you can listen on the app. We stream live on the app, our entire show, all 5 hours long.
We do. It's there. It's right there.
Yep. So there you go. Look at this headline here. This didn't get a lot of publicity, but Trump confirms National Security Council firings after Walt's signal chat woes snowball. You saw also, and we asked this question, we thought it might happen. The Inspector General of the Pentagon is looking into it.
Yeah. Right.
We knew that. We knew that was going to happen.
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, the IG's not doing their job if they don't, right?
Yep. We'll get to that and a whole bunch more coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.